Hello and welcome to MacIver's Grant Public Library's Storytime Tuesday. This video will also be used in the Explore from Anywhere October 2020 Space Race Challenge on Read Squared. Explore from Anywhere is a partnership between UT-TSU Extension, MacIver's Grant Public Library, Dyer County 4-H, and this month Discovery Park of America is joining us. So one of the things that we are going to do this month in the Explore from Anywhere packet and in some of our programming at the library is to make a pumpkin kano. Have you ever made a pumpkin kano? Oh, it's going to be wonderful. So you can go to the Read Squared site and find the information on how to make a pumpkin kano. And one of the things that we're going to do along with that is we're going to read this book called How Many Seeds in a Pumpkin. It's by Margaret McNamara. She's the author, so she wrote the words. And G. Brian Karras is the illustrator. That means he drew the pictures. This book tells us a little bit about another experiment that we would like to do. So I'm going to read this story and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. This book was published by Schwartz Wade Books of New York. We are going to do this experiment on October 30th in our parking lot. We are going to do the Great Pumpkin Palooza Family Science Night, and before we make our pumpkin kanos, we are going to predict how many seeds we think might be in our pumpkins. I'm going to show you real quick before we read the book. Let me show you a couple pumpkins we have right here. I borrowed this one from the Friends of the Library pumpkin sale, which is going to take place on October 9th. And then this is a little one that I've brought from home. If you can look very closely at the pumpkins, let's kind of talk about how they're the same and how they're different. What color are they? They're both the same color, aren't they? They're little different colors of the same color, but what color is that? That's right, that's orange. That's orange. And so they both have a stem. You see the stem on our pumpkin. They both have a bottom. If you look at the bottom, you can see. They both have lines down the side, don't they? Can you see those lines down the side of the pumpkin? And if you look at pumpkins, and they are the same variety of pumpkin, these might not be the same variety. See how this outside is a little smoother than that one, and this is a little different size? If you find two that are the same kind of pumpkin, you might be interested in counting how many lines are on each one of them. You might find something out in this story that we read, okay? Let's find out what happens and how many seeds are in a pumpkin. Are you ready? Oop, look, there's a classroom. There's a picture of a classroom. And there's a little boy going to school. He's got his backpack on, doesn't he? Charlie liked school. He liked his teacher, Mr. Tiffin. He liked his best friend, Alex. But he did not like lining up to go into school. Mr. Tiffin's class lined up by size, tallest to smallest or smallest to tallest. And Charlie was the smallest in the class every time. Look at all of his friends. Can you see how much smaller Charlie is than his friends? It kind of goes down gradually when you look at it like that. But look at how little Charlie is compared to the tallest boy in his class. Have you ever been the tallest or the smallest someplace? Did it make you feel a little uncomfortable? One chilly fall morning, Charlie was surprised to see 3 bright orange pumpkins on Mr. Tiffin's desk. One pumpkin was big, one pumpkin was medium, and one was small. Sounds like the 3 bears, doesn't it? How many seeds in a pumpkin? Mr. Tiffin asked the class. Does anybody know? How do you think you would find out how many seeds are in a pumpkin? Tell me what you think you would do to find out how many seeds were in there. Just say it out loud. Let's see how he does. Nobody knew, but everybody had ideas. The biggest one has the most, said Robert. I bet it has 1 million seeds. Robert was the tallest boy in class. The medium one has 500, Eleanor said. Eleanor always sounded as if she knew exactly what she was talking about. The tiny one has 22, said Anna. Anna liked even numbers better than odd numbers. Mr. Tiffin wrote down all the guesses on the blackboard. Charlie was very quiet. What are you thinking, Charlie? Asked Mr. Tiffin. I'm thinking that all the best guesses are taken, Charlie said. Why don't we open these pumpkins up and see, said Mr. Tiffin. Charlie was quiet, wasn't he? The next day, the kids in Mr. Tiffin's class brought in spoons for scooping and bowls for holding and plastic bags for throwing out, and they covered the floor with newspaper. They put on their smocks. "It's a messy business counting pumpkin seeds," said Mr. Tiffin, but the class was ready. You know what I like in this picture? I like how the newspapers all have all that newsprint on them. See how they all look like they've got their stories and pictures? I like how he drew that. That looks very realistic, doesn't it? I thought for a minute that he used real newspapers because they looked so good, but he just drew the pictures. After Mr. Tiffin cut a circle around each pumpkin stem, Kimmy, Alex, and Jake pulled off the caps. The children peered inside. "This one, the big one, definitely has the most," said Robert. "We'll see," said Mr. Tiffin. The pumpkin pulp was slimy and stringy, and the seeds were hard to get out. Have you ever taken all the seeds out of a pumpkin? Have you ever put your fingers in there and all that goo? It's kind of yucky, isn't it? It's kind of fun, though. Those seeds are slippery when you touch them in a pumpkin, aren't they? When the children were finished, there were 3 empty pumpkins, 3 full bowls, and 20 messy hands. If there were 20 messy hands, how many students were there in the class? Every student has 2 hands, so there'd be 10 students in the class. "Tomorrow we will find out the answer to our question," said Mr. Tiffin. "Tonight, your homework is to think about how we should count all those seeds." How would you count all those seeds? What would you do for your homework? What would your idea be? How would you want to count them? Think of some ideas and let's talk about those. Talk about those with your grown-up. Or you can put it in the comments underneath the video. That afternoon, Mr. Tiffin dried the seeds. See him using his little toaster oven? The next day, he put them in 3 paper bags marked big, medium, and small. "Did you do your thinking homework?" he asked the class. "Did you do your thinking homework?" "Yes," said Alex. "I think we should just guess." "I think we should count very, very carefully," said Tara. "I think we should count by 2s, 5s, and 10s, said Molly. Those are 3 very different ideas, aren't they? The only one I think wouldn't work was just to guess. You wouldn't really know, would you, if you just guessed? I like that Molly had very specific ideas of counting by 2s and 5s and 10s. The class agreed that Molly had a good idea. Robert, Kimmy, and Jake all wanted to count the seeds in the pumpkin by 2s. Anna asked if she could join them. "We can be the 2s club," she said. They practiced counting. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, they said together. They're counting by 2s. Can you do that? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. They skipped all the odd numbers. Jeremy, Tara, Eleanor, Molly, and Alex liked counting by 5s. "We'll count the seeds in the medium pumpkin," said Molly. "We can be the 5s club." 5, 10, 15, 20, they cheered. Can you count by 5s? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. "I'll take the smallest pumpkin," said Charlie. "I guess I'll be the 10s club." "Good idea," said Mr. Tiffin. 10, 20, 30, began Charlie. See, Charlie, he's the 10s club, isn't he? Can you count by 10s? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Soon there were many groups of seeds in front of each pumpkin. Look at all that counting. When I count, I like to count it twice. Seems like I always get 2 different numbers, so I usually end up counting 3 times. "See," said Robert, "the 2s club has the most." They had 170 pairs of seeds. 170 times 2. That would tell you how many that was. "We have lots too," said Eleanor. "They had 63 groups of 5 and 1 seed left over." 63 groups of 5 and 1 seed left over. Charlie had exactly 35 groups of 10 seeds. Let's go back and talk about those numbers again. The Tues Club had 170 pairs of seeds. So that means they had 170 seeds times 2. That would be 340 seeds. We have lots too, said Eleanor. They had 63 groups of 5 seeds and 1 seed left over. That I can't do in my head. You might can, but let's count them by 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 95, 100. 105, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 85, 90, 200. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, 300. 305, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 36, 336 seeds. Which one has more? The bigger one has more, doesn't it? 340 and 336. And the Tens Club. Charlie had exactly 35 groups of 10. 35 times 10 is 350. Which one had more? Robert looked at the seeds in front of Charlie. You don't have a whole lot, he said. Let's get to counting, said Mr. Tiffin. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, began Robert, Jimmy, Cake, and Anna. It took a long time to count 170 pairs of seeds. My brain hurts, said Anna. The biggest pumpkin had 340 seeds, almost 1,000,000, Jake said. The 5s were a little easier. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Janet, Jeremy, Tara, Eleanor, and Molly. There were 316 seeds in the medium pumpkin. Miss Vanessa counted them wrong. Too bad for you, said Robert. It's not a contest, said Molly. Miss Vanessa must have got her fingers mixed up, didn't she? 316. The tens groups were the fastest of all, since there were just 35 groups. 10, 20, 30, 40, Charlie counted to himself. This can't be right, he said. Why can't it be right, said Mr. Tiffin. There are 350 seeds in my little pumpkin, said Charlie. That means it has the most of all. So it does, said Mr. Tiffin. Congratulations, Charlie, said Alex. The 10 Club wins. It's not a contest, said Robert. Did you expect the littlest pumpkin to have the most seeds? Mr. Tiffin told the class to gather around. You can never tell just how many seeds are in a pumpkin until you open it, he said, but there are some clues. Take a look at these, and the class did. Charlie's is darker orange, said Anna, and it has more lines on the outside, said Robert. Yep, said Mr. Tiffin. For each line on the outside, there's a row of seeds on the inside. So let's stop just real quick and take a look at our pumpkin. Do you see all those lines? There's a lot of lines on my pumpkin. Do you see all of them? For every line in the side of my pumpkin, there's a row of seeds inside. We don't know how many seeds are on each row, but we know that that's a lot of rows of seeds, isn't it, for such a little pumpkin? And you see this big pumpkin? Can you see these lines? For every line on the outside, there's a row of seeds on the inside. It's pretty awesome, isn't it? And the longer the pumpkin grows, the more lines it gets, he added. And the skin gets darker too. So even though my pumpkin was the smallest, it was on the vine the longest, said Charlie. Exactly, said Mr. Tiffin. I like how Mr. Tiffin let them play in the pumpkins and explore and talk about what their ideas were, and then he talked to them about some of the other things, ways that they could find out ahead of time next time. I think that was pretty interesting. When it was time to go home, the class lined up by the door. Smallest to tallest this time, said Mr. Tiffin. Robert was at the back, Eleanor was in the middle, and Charlie was in the front. Small things can have a lot going on inside them, Charlie said to Mr. Tiffin. And then they left the classroom with Charlie leading the way. Do you think that's true? Do you think small things can have a lot of things going on inside them? I think we just proved it with the pumpkins, and I think we proved it with Charlie too, didn't we? He learned that it doesn't mean he had less inside him just because he was smaller. It means everybody's got a lot inside them, don't they? And a lot to give. And this is the end of this book. And it says, Charlie's Pumpkin Facts. Pumpkin seeds are small, but powerful. A whole huge pumpkin grows from one tiny seed. You can eat pumpkin seeds if you want, but you should ask somebody to roast them first. They contain a lot of vitamin A. If you plant pumpkin seeds, do it after the ground warms up in the spring. You'll need a lot of space for them to grow. Pumpkins grow on vines. It takes about 4 months for a pumpkin to grow to full size, so plant your seeds by June if you want a pumpkin for Halloween. Is a pumpkin a vegetable? No, it's a fruit. Some pumpkins are small. I like those. Some pumpkins are really, really big. Usually big pumpkins don't taste very good. Small, sweet pumpkins are the kind you should use to make a pumpkin pie. Counting by 2s and 5s and 10s makes counting go faster. That's not really a pumpkin fact, but it's true. And then there's a note from Mr. Tiffin. I looked pretty carefully for those 3 pumpkins so that Charlie, Robert, and Anna and the other students would not be able to predict what was inside. Pollination, pumpkin variety, and time on the vine determine how many lines are on a pumpkin and how many seeds are inside. Size alone is not the most important thing, which worked out great for Charlie. There's a note from Mr. Tiffin. There's Charlie and his pumpkin, and there's Charlie's pumpkin facts on the back of the book. And there's the back. I liked that book. I'm so glad you came and joined me, and I hope that you get your pumpkin and you cut a little circle on the top and take it off and look inside and see how many seeds are in there, and you might get 2 pumpkins and compare like Charlie and his class did. You could do 3 like they did, or you could do 2 or more. Thank you for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye.